Hello and welcome again to the Christian origins of nearly everything with your quick Christian history guy, Jeff Kenny, and the brains behind the entire project, my compadre, Orion here. This time around, we're looking at the Christian origins of many things theatrical. That may come as a surprise to many folks who know something of the history of the rather tumultuous relationship between the church and the theater, though to be fair, that story has often been told from a pretty one-sided angle in many circles. Yes, it is true that theater was widely condemned and denounced in the early church and again in more recent centuries, but theater in the world of the 1st and 2nd centuries and beyond, in the Roman world, was essentially synonymous with the lowdown, to say the least. Not only was it salacious in its bawdiness and rife with risque behavior, it tended to play off many of the same appeals to the worst of human nature as the Colosseum games: bloodlust, violence, and vicious assaults on whatever group was out of public favor at the time. Of course, during the early centuries of Christianity, Christians fit neatly into that category, and one early Christian writer noted that ridicule and mockery of Christians was almost as prominent as illicit sexuality in the early theater. And yes, attendance of and participation in theater was understandably condemned by early Christian leaders. However, as Christianity emerged as a primary civilizing entity following the fall of the Roman Empire, popular and liturgical devotion led to a great movement of theatrical endeavors during the Middle Ages and into the Renaissance period. By the 10th century, liturgical dramas began to emerge from the enactment of the Christian Mass, specifically in relation to Easter time. The popularity of the Paschal dramas led to theatrical performances being separated from the liturgy or church service and becoming their own genre, held outside the walls of church buildings. These miracle plays, as they were called, focused on Mary and the saints in addition to biblical stories and were extremely popular with audiences across Europe during the 12th and 13th centuries. Growing from these miracle plays were even more elaborate and uber-popular mystery plays by the 15th century. One interesting facet of those performances was that they were often conceived, acted, and executed by the spiritual lay guild of a given town, whose members were generally illiterate laymen such as masons or merchants. The richness of language, poetry, and symbolism in these plays puts much modern popular entertainment to shame, lest we be fooled into thinking that quote-unquote popular culture has always meant mindless and mind-numbing entertainment. The well-known Passion plays were exceptionally popular examples of mystery plays and took on an almost worshipful role in the life of the average European at the time. In many ways, the legacy of the old mystery plays evolved into a performance genre heavily influenced and supported by the Society of Jesus, or Jesuits, in the early 1600s, and that is the opera. One well-known figure who certainly experienced mystery plays, and who incorporated their richness into his own works, was arguably the greatest playwright in history, William Shakespeare. In fact, popular theater-related Christian traditions are reflected in Shakespeare's works, including the title of his play, Twelfth Night, which refers to the last night of the 12 days of Christmas, the eve of Epiphany, which culminated many days of celebration and even theatrics. Shakespeare's play doesn't take place on January 5th, but takes its name from the merrymaking and masquerading of the old Christian holiday. Another Shakespeare play, A Midsummer Night's Dream, refers to another ancient Christian tradition, that of June 24th, the feast of St. John the Baptist, when particularly strange, supernatural, and fairy-esque hijinks may take place. In fact, many of Shakespeare's plays contain references to Christian terms, feasts, and figures. Speaking of terms, many modern theatrical terms originated, not surprisingly, with the medieval theater. You've likely noticed that the term season applies to the cycle of performances of theatrical plays, and has now expanded to our television and internet-based programs as well. Referring to a performance season evolved directly from theatrical performances in Europe which centered around the church's liturgical seasons, such as Christmastide, Lent, Eastertide, and others. In fact, our terms pageant and pageantry grow from the medieval Christian performance culture. The Latin word pagina refers to a page in a book, but came to reference a scene in a play. The list could go on, but right now, Orion and I have to get to the theater, though there is a lot to be avoided out there, once again. But there's a lot of good stuff, too. Until next time, this is your quick Christian history guy, Jeff Kenny, encouraging you to click and subscribe and check out our other videos here at the Christian origins of nearly everything.